Satya Nadella just gave an hour-long podcast with Dwarkesh. Dwarkesh is one of the most influential podcasters in Silicon Valley, but I'm not interested in just summarizing for you. I want to actually call out what happened between the lines of that podcast because Satya gave us some really interesting clues as to how he's thinking, and frankly, not all of it makes sense. Let me lay out a couple of examples. On the one hand, Satya says artificial general intelligence really ought to be measured by global GDP growth. Can AGI achieve 10% global GDP growth, he says. And I think that's a fair ask. If you're going to set lofty standards and say this is going to change the world, you should be able to show that it's actually going to change the world in terms of overall economic prosperity. That would be trillions of dollars in economic impact, to be clear, like on the order of 10 trillion or so per year. And yet in the same breath, he refuses to invest. In fact, he says that CapEx for Microsoft is something that he's kind of cautious about. He doesn't really want to overinvest in AI infrastructure. If you think AGI might be possible, why would you choose to not invest in it ahead of demand? If you want to drive economic growth, in most cases, you have to invest to stay ahead of the curve. Microsoft was really aggressive on CapEx a year ago. Why is Satya pulling back? Well, I have a suggestion. One of them is that Microsoft isn't winning consumer AI. And Satya actually touches on this in the podcast. He talks about ChatGPT being a massive success story for OpenAI. They've hit 400 million monthly active users. They're doing phenomenally well. They're easily the biggest consumer success story in AI by like a mile. But Bing isn't there. Copilot really isn't there for consumers. And Satya moves away from consumers. Satya spends a lot of time talking about enterprise. And that's not super surprising because enterprise is something that the street was really worried about during Microsoft's last earnings call. And whatever Dwarkesh's official audience might be, Satya has the Wall Street analysts in mind when he gives these kinds of podcasts. He wants to show how Microsoft is being cautious on CapEx so that it can continue to pace demand from customers on AI development. He does not want to get hammered again in the markets in the next quarter because he overinvested on AI. So he talks about Azure, he talks about enterprise AI, and when it comes to innovation, he talks a big game about quantum computing and how that's a real breakthrough and how it's something that's going to be a leg up for Microsoft long-term, et cetera. Conveniently, the quantum computing breakthrough that he's talking about is not the kind of balance sheet hit that massive AI CapEx is. And that leaves Satya free to say, AI is not a winner-take-all market. AI is something that we can have multiple winners in. Microsoft can slow down a little bit and still be a winner is the implication. Microsoft can solidify its enterprise AI moat. And effectively, Satya says AGI isn't so close in his view that he has to worry about investing a ton of money right now or else he's going to miss the boat. That is almost exactly the opposite of what Zuckerberg said a month ago. We have major CEOs on different sides of this bet right now, and I think that's really interesting. At the moment, Satya seems to be choosing optionality. He's hedging his bets. He seems to be sort of wanting to be in on AI to the extent that it supports earnings, but not so far in that he wants to invest super heavily ahead of demand. We'll see. This is a guy who is still putting his $80 billion in on AI this year, so it's not that he's pulling back, but he's being cautious and he's signaling to the street that he's not just going to keep pouring endless cash in. I think his position doesn't entirely make sense, but I think it makes for a good set of Microsoft talking points for the street. I'm curious to hear what you think. Cheers.